Hello and welcome to our next episode of On the Sofa at Hellamore Property. And today we have Mike and Mark from Mewstone Mortgage Advice and Later Life Lending, and they are here to tell you a little bit about their business. Welcome, Mike and Mark.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
So can you tell us a little bit about your business and how you work?
I think we should start with you, Mark.
Thank you very much. So, we're Mewstone Mortgage Advice. We've known each other since I was about 16, so that's a little while ago. I've been mortgage advisor for nearly 20 years now. And Mewstone Mortgage Advice started January 2021, so literally the first day of the second lockdown. And we provide mortgage advice to customers in the Plymouth and South Ham local areas. And then Mike offers a very bespoke service within our business.
That's right, yeah. So I joined Mark and Nathan, the rest of the guys at Mewstone, probably about 3 years ago now. And there's a huge gap in the market for holistic later life lending advice, and I think Mark picked up on this. So we had a coffee, and then kind of 6 months later, here I was. So yeah, I joined the business 3 years ago with just an intention to fill that gap and provide a more holistic service to those clients.
Great. I think what's key for me with your business is that you're local as well, like we are. So when people do come to you with maybe a slightly different property, you'll know where it is and why, how to get probably the best advice for them. So how would you say your advice is different to the way you approach things to other mortgage advisors?
I think for me, I've come from a corporate background like Mark has, and the one-size-fits-all mortgage is a really difficult thing to find nowadays. They are still out there, but the reality is people's situations are just getting more and more complicated. Specifically in my part of the business, people are taking their mortgages longer, so having things like provision for pension, so looking at what their pension provision is, helps clients to take their mortgages later into their life. And when we're talking about buying and selling houses, another 5 years on a mortgage could be the difference between them buying that property that's slightly more accustomed to their needs in later life, so having that stretch is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the big difference with Mewstone compared to some of the other mortgage advice services available is that we can help not just with mortgages, so it could be equity release. It could be doing a mortgage on something that's got an agricultural tie, sort of fairly common in the local area. It could be that buying a property that maybe isn't mortgageable as it stands right now, so bridging finance. And where lots of mortgage advice companies offer these different options, they're very often outsourced to somebody not in the area, so then you lose the looking after that client relationship that we work so hard to build. So we do all of these services in-house. We do have access to the whole of the market, and we're dealing with that client and dealing with your client from beginning to end. So yeah, having access and services to all of these unusual products under one roof is really, really sort of unique to Mewstone.
So at the moment, obviously we're in a world which is fairly difficult from a lending point of view. We hear it quite a lot where people are struggling to get mortgages, but a lot of that is because they haven't had the right advice. What sort of queries and questions would you say, or fears probably, or concerns would you say first-time buyers and also later life lending people as well? What would you say you're hearing a lot of at the moment?
I think on the later life side, a lot of people, quite rightly so, go to their banks because they come from an era where you went to a bank for everything. You had a local branch manager you went and saw, who would look at your mortgage, who would look at your savings and all of these things. And the reality is all of that's being stripped out now. So quite often clients in later life are going to their banks and being told no, because some of the banks are very strict on how long they'll allow a mortgage to go for. But the reality is there are lots of other lenders not far off the high street that are still willing to do this type of lending, and they rely heavily on brokers like myself to kind of leverage that experience and find the right lenders for the right people.
Yeah.
So in the later life space, there is still an abundance of lenders that want to do business. It's just finding the right ones.
Of course. With first-time buyers, I'd imagine, are they struggling at the moment to understand what they can do?
I think so. I think there's different challenges. So for a first-time buyer, deposit, major issue. Saving 10% deposit on something that's worth £200,000, £20,000 to just sort of find that is really, really difficult. So there are options out there where lower levels of deposit can be used. Self-employment, that's another thing, we were talking about this earlier today, that self-employment can be a real challenge in the mortgage market. But again, having choice to all lenders and exploring what options are actually out there and available, as opposed to just speaking to your bank and maybe being stonewalled and being told, actually, look, I can't get a mortgage for you because of X. Having that freedom of the whole of the market means that you're opening doors that perhaps weren't there available.
And just to add on that as well, the breadth of experience that we have as a group of individuals that have all spent a long time in this industry, we have these kind of intergenerational products as well, where we can look at, for example, a first-time buyer and leverage security in the parent's house, either by cash or equity, to then be able to support their purchase. So Bank of Mum and Dad is still the fourth biggest lender in the UK for a reason. They are still actively looking to lend money to their future generations to ensure that they have housing fit for the future. So where we do really well, I think, is actually we're not afraid to kind of lift the lid and open up and look at these really complex situations and work out how can we find a solution that's going to fit all of those generations.
It's interesting because we sell quite a lot of shared ownership properties, and we've also got a new development at the moment where we're having our next 6 properties are going to be 80% lending, 80% ownership, and then the council are funding in theory the other 20%. I'm assuming you guys deal with all types of mortgage. It doesn't really matter what we present to you. It's worth anybody talking to you depending. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the experience, isn't it? So that sounds like a discounted market value.
That's it, sorry. I was trying to get my words out.
So we've got loads of experience in those, and lots of other different sort of local council schemes, local authority schemes we've got loads of experience in. But again, not every mortgage lender is going to do that. It could be that you go to your bank or you go to a lender and they say, no, we just don't offer that. So it could be a real small area of the mortgage market that's able to offer mortgages on that basis. The best way of accessing those mortgages is by speaking to somebody independent. And I think what a lot of first-time buyers assume is that if you go and have an appointment and sit down with a mortgage advisor, there's a cost for that. But actually exploring your options, finding a solution, even getting pre-approved for that mortgage, there is no cost for doing that. Any fees for mortgage advice or mortgage arrangement come much later on in the process, but sitting down and speaking to an advisor who can get you ready to buy a property, there's no cost for doing that, so you've literally got nothing to lose.
Yeah, of course. So in the next 12 months are going to be interesting, might be a bit bumpy for a lot of people. So what would your advice be to any walk of life? No matter whether they are young or older, on how to approach their mortgage market. Is that going to be pretty much what you've just said? Just come and chat with you?
I think preparedness is a big thing in here, but quite often I speak to people that unfortunately are coming to engage with me too late in the process. They potentially already found the property and now they've only decided that they need to try and find a way to fund that purchase. So I think for anyone who's thinking about buying a property, get your ducks in a row, get everything together before you start going out to look, because it might be that there are some things in your situation that need to be considered with a little bit more detail. So by having those conversations really early on, and as Mark says, engaging with that free advice early in the process, it just prevents the amount of things that could potentially go right later on down the road.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, we call it getting mortgage ready.
Okay.
Getting pre-approved for a mortgage. So having your documents in order. Most customers don't know what documents they need to be able to explore their mortgage options. Most customers won't have ever looked at their credit files before, or even if they have, understanding information within those credit files. So we ask for war and peace early on in the process, before you've either put your property on the market, before you start viewing property, because you need to get in a position where you know what you can borrow, you know what that's going to cost you each month, you know what sort of fees or deposit you're going to need to make that happen. So getting mortgage ready as early as possible is the key piece of advice that we'd always give.
Okay. Well, thank you to you both for taking time out today and coming and telling us a little bit about your business. Obviously, as we've already said, you're local. You're only down the road from here in Plymouth, aren't you? So just on Marsh Mills there. We will put your contact details up at the end of this interview for people to come through and have a chat with you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.